Overall, no matter what their experience was, whether they were able to complete the 21-day challenge so far, they've all said it's been a worthwhile process and that they learned a lot about their individual journey.
The challenge, I was having really bad problems and had been to the doctor numerous times for ulcers and also the chiropractor for my back. And I noticed after I did the challenge for a couple weeks, I stopped being in pain. And I think that by not complaining and being like, Mom, my back hurts, Mom, my stomach hurts, I need to go to the doctor, I just stopped saying it and I stopped thinking it and I stopped feeling it. And I actually went to the doctor a while after and they're like, your ulcers are gone, my back didn't hurt anymore. So it really, it made me realize that there are health issues and there's serious health issues, but a lot of times it's mental, and the more that you think about it and you're aware of it, the worse it hurts. And so I just think that the complaint-free challenge really changed my outlook on health issues and complaining about that. So helped me a lot. I feel so much better.
Complaining is also damaging to our emotional health. A recent study at the University of Missouri at Columbia found that teenage girls whose relationships were based primarily on complaining tended to suffer far higher rates of depression. So complaining keeps us focused on the problem rather than looking for solutions. Complaining is damaging to our health. Complaining is also damaging to our relationships. It's damaging to our relationships in that it perpetuates. It doesn't eliminate, it perpetuates the problems in the relationship. My wife used to work with some women who would get together once a month for what they called group therapy. Group therapy meant that they got together and complained about the men in their lives. And from what I understand, they decided that all men are dogs. All men are dogs. Now, sitting there and having this focus that all men are dogs and looking for stories that are going to reinforce this concept and complaining about the fact that all men are dogs, it was not surprising that they found Old Yeller sitting in the lazy boy, because they had defined the men this way and the men responded by acting in the way that they were defined. When you complain within a relationship, you're not going to transform the person. If anything, you're going to make them more intractable and get them to stay like that. Best-selling author Dr. Thomas Stanley said that when we complain about somebody, they live down to that expectation. It reinforces who they are, and they stay in that paradigm. Complaining to somebody is not going to transform them. You have never complained anybody into positive change, including yourself. A while back, I was in a hotel in Austin, Texas, and unlike a lot of the hotels I stayed in, there was 2 external doors leading in. I was staying in a suite in the corner, and there was 2 external doors. There was one from the lobby, and then there was one into a little foyer. Couldn't have been more than about 3 feet. And there was a door to my room, my suite, and there was also a door to the suite next door. So I was in and out of my room all day, and I would open the door and let it close, and then open my door and let it close. So there was 2 doors being opened and closed every time. And around 7:30 that night, I was going to a reception upstairs on the 18th floor. I came out of my hotel room, I let the door shut, came out of the second door, let it shut, and I hear this woman behind me, and she goes, "You are the rudest man I've ever met in my life." I didn't turn around. I didn't think she was talking to me. But then she cleared up the confusion. "Hey, I'm talking to you." And so I turned around. She said, "You are the rudest man I have ever met. You're slamming these doors every time you come through here. Slam, 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 slam." She said, "It's very simple." And she very sarcastically grabbed the handle of the door and she goes, "See? Open, close, open, close." And I just smiled and got on the elevator. Now, the challenging thing was, in my mind, I had no relationship with this woman. But she had one with me. The relationship she had with me was that I was a rude individual. And she reinforced that, because as I was traveling up the elevator, I was thinking, I didn't slam those doors deliberately, but by golly, I will when I get in tonight. I'll show her what door slamming's all about. Of course I didn't. But the thing is, in a relationship, when you complain to somebody, you drag down the energy of the relationship.
It really did help, the negativity. That really decreased a typical conversation would be sitting around at the end of the day complaining about how busy the day was and how bad the patients were. And that really did turn to how much we accomplished in the day and how ill these patients were and how we could accommodate them in spite of their illness. So it really did a total turnaround, even aside from relationships between the staff, which typically, like Colleen said, in any institution, especially when predominated with women, can tend to take on a real adversarial role. It really impacted greatly, not just our interrelationships between each other, but the patients and staff and families, the docs even. Yeah. We actually became nice to the radiologists in our department.
Some of the things I've heard since is that I really didn't want to do this, Professor Went, but I'm so glad it changed my life. It changed my relationships with my parents, with my peers. A lot of times these students still live at home. Mom would see the book laying on the counter. She'd say, "What are you doing?" "I want to do it." So many moms picked up the book, it's incredible. And when a whole family does it together, the support system is there and it's built in. I could think of students that have shared they have improved relationships with their parents, with their boyfriends or girlfriends. They've seen an improvement in their study skills, in their grades, how they take life serious and not so much for granted.
I also became aware, though, of relationships I had where we were focused more on complaining and gossiping than on actually doing constructive things. And I found that with those relationships that either I had to address that person directly and say, I want to change our relationship and change the way we speak, or I would have to spend less time with that person because our pattern was a pattern of negativity and that I wanted to move to a more positive place.
The research says that when you complain and you're negative, you create a chemical in your brain that lasts for 6 seconds. If you have positive thoughts in your brain, it creates a chemical in your brain that affects your body for 6 seconds. If you quit complaining, you can't stop the negative thoughts. We call them ants, automatic negative thoughts. You can't stop them from coming, but when you give them energy and putting them out, you're creating negative things inside yourself, you're creating negative chemicals, and this affects the other person. If you're not putting out the negative thoughts, then all at once you start receiving good stuff. We know in our relationship that from the tone of her voice when I ask a question, I can hear things, and if I'm sensitive to what I hear, we don't criticize.
This is my brother Milos, and we at home we were arguing actually a lot over things, who is who and whose is whose, and like what, like let's say if I'm on a computer, he wants a computer, then okay, then we have to switch up, and then we were arguing, oh no, it's not fair, you've been on the computer for long, it's my time now, or like watching TV or something. But like after 2 weeks or so, we got used to it. We didn't argue a lot. Right now we don't even actually argue so much. We're actually closer than we were before. So.
It is also not healthy communication. You're not speaking directly and only to the person who can resolve the change in many cases. Because a lot of times people will have a problem with their boss and they'll complain to their spouse. Or they'll have a problem with their intimate partner and they'll complain to their friends. What they need to be doing is speaking directly and only. This is what creates healthy relationships. And complaining is damaging to relationships. Complaining is also damaging to our careers. Have you ever seen a job description that said, must gripe frequently? Of course not. You're not going to see a job description that says that. People know that you can teach people about any skill, but to find somebody with a great attitude is rare as diamonds, and those people are going to be promoted. I once worked with a man who, at the age of 35, convinced some friends to help him buy a radio station in a small town. And within a few years, he had nearly a dozen radio stations, and they were all doing very well. And I asked him, I said, how are you able to do so well in such a competitive industry? He said, I've got great people. I said, how are you able to get such great people? He said, you know, I only have one rule of management, and that is no weeds in my garden. No weeds in my garden. No negative, complaining people, because negative, complaining people tend to draw out the negativity in others, and they complain very frequently.